Getting a movie made, it's constant pressure. Every day is a challenge. You have all kinds of issues that you don't anticipate, but it's called process. How many films do you remember 30 years after they were made?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to After the Thunder. I'm Jamie Little from NASCAR on Fox. I'm a pit reporter, and we have a couple of awesome guests joining us now. Of course, America's crew chief and my fellow NASCAR on Fox teammate, Larry McReynolds, and former Cup driver and fill-in extraordinaire and awesome television host, analyst, pit reporter, you name it, Regan Smith. Hi, guys.
Hey, how are you?
How's it going, Jamie? I'm excited to be here with you.
This is so much fun. So the golden hour at the director's cut of Days of Thunder, anybody who's a NASCAR fan, maybe if you're even not a NASCAR fan, you're just a race fan in general, you have seen this movie. And what we're seeing and what we just witnessed as a group is pretty spectacular. 30 years later, and they talk about the making of this movie. I was blown away by the behind the scenes. The director's cut is what it is and exactly what it took to make this movie a reality. And Larry, I'll start with you. You were crew chiefing during this whole phenomenon that came to be Days of Thunder when they were shooting it. Take us back to that moment and what it was like actually trying to focus on your job, but seeing Hollywood take over the infield.
Yeah, it was very interesting, Jamie. And quite honestly, I was shocked that NASCAR bought into it. But Bill France Jr., of course, who was guiding our ship then, I think he knew how much this could grow the sport of NASCAR. And, you know, I remember him trying to qualify a car at Bristol in August of 1989 because they couldn't just put a car in that field. They actually had to go out there and try to qualify, and they missed the race. And then the Phoenix race a little bit later that year, they had the camera car in that race. But, of course, the big deal was the Daytona 500 where they had two cars at the back of the field that ran about 100 miles. They had to keep going to the garage area to change the cameras out. But when I watched this documentary, two things I had no idea, Jamie, is it reminded me a little bit of a race team. Way over budget and way behind. I mean, they ran into the very final hour, and I had no idea that Tom Cruise had actually driven a Hendrick car at a Daytona test, and he's the one that kind of went to Hollywood and sold this, and then he also, along with some of the executive producers, had to go to Daytona and sell the man on it, Bill France Jr.
So much behind the scenes we didn't know. Regan, what was your takeaway from it?
Well, the first takeaway is I didn't realize Larry was crew chiefing back in those days already, and I was maybe 9 years old as I watched that. So, Larry, I take that for what it's worth. I'm not saying anything, but maybe a little bit age on us there. In all seriousness, though, you know, to Larry's point, the thing that shocked me was the fact that Tom Cruise actually was the one that came up with the idea for this, and that he was doing driving. I honestly didn't even know that Tom Cruise drove it all. So to watch that right at the start of this and see that he was doing the driving, and that's what got the bug in him to go and want to create a movie about NASCAR was absolutely incredible. And the drivers, or the actors that actually did the driving in the movie, I didn't know that happened. I didn't know that they were on the racetrack. I was a kid when I watched this movie. I was a kid that wanted to be a race car driver, that wanted to drive stock cars when I got older. And, you know, at that day and age, NASCAR was on TV, and that's all I knew it as. My family knew it was a big deal. Well, then when it hit the big screens, it was a whole nother ball game at that point, and it changed, you know, I think a lot of people's perception of the sport. To Larry's point, it grew the sport leaps and bounds because of that. And it gave it this whole new vibe and feeling of it was cool, and it was fun, and it was exciting. And to see some of the clips and the camera cars, another thing I had no clue about was that they had actual camera cars on the racetrack that were racing in the races. I just assumed as a kid and as a fan, and I've never researched it until I just saw it on the clips here. I just assumed that they got the videos however they could. I didn't know they put cars out there. So a lot of knowledge in the quick film there.
You know what I loved, Larry and Regan, about this is hearing from Rusty Wallace and how he said they were trying to pass that car so they can get their car in the shot and get some notoriety for their sponsors. Can you imagine like Kyle Busch or Kevin Harvick slowing up to make sure they're in a Hollywood film photo or shoot because they're trying to race to win the 500?
Yeah, I mean, I remember we were having a tough day that day. I was working on the 26 car Brett Bodine, and we were really struggling. We somehow, some way salvage a top 20 finish out of it. I'm not sure we ever actually lapped the camera cars. I know there were a lot of drivers that did, and to hear Rusty say, I just wanted to get up there and kind of run beside him a little bit to see if I could get our car on camera. But I do remember the garage area that morning. There was a lot of production going on in the garage area, and then pit road was absolute. You think it was madness this past Daytona 500 with you down there and President Trump? It was absolute madness on this pit road just because of all the pageantry going on for the Daytona 500 and all the film crews and everything else that was going on pit road prior to the start of the race.
And Regan, it's interesting. You mentioned you were a kid watching it. So watching a movie like that, seeing what NASCAR maybe was, how did it compare to the real thing when you got there? Because when they make these Hollywood films or shows, the integrity is a really big part. They don't want to make a mockery of this sport that we take so seriously. What was it like, and how did it compare to your first entrance into NASCAR?
Well, I think obviously, Jamie, the sport matured a lot by the time I got there. I think the first year I was doing actual NASCAR racing as a career was probably 04, 05, somewhere in that ballpark. So we're talking 12, 13 years later. And a lot had changed in those 12 or 13 years. Now, there was also a lot that didn't change. And there's a lot that's in the movie that I look back on and I'm like, man, like they were probably loosely interpreting certain things, but that's kind of how it is right there. Like, holy cow, the rivalries, the fact that the drivers despise each other at certain times, the fact that sometimes NASCAR has to step in and they got to be a part of it. So there's a lot of that was just, it was kind of spot on, to be perfectly honest with you. And once you get into it and you start seeing and noticing those things, you're like, man, that's amazing that they could hit that closely in what they were doing with the movie and still be able to add that entertainment value. And there's always things that you have to add for entertainment value and embellish, if you want to call it that, for entertainment value, as we saw with the wreck and the clip of the car flipping down the back straightaway. It was an airport runway, as I also just learned a little while ago. But that kind of stuff, that adds to the value for somebody that maybe isn't a race fan, that doesn't watch racing all the time. It's also something that makes them watch more frequently after they see something like that.
Absolutely. I think they said there was a bomb that went off behind the fence to make it look even bigger. It was awesome. Like you said, cool. Well, you guys, we have another really special guest. He actually had a couple cameos, I believe, in Days of Thunder. He was a teammate of mine for many, many years. He is so loved and respected. I want to welcome in Mr. Dr. Jerry Punch.
Hey, Jamie. Hey, guys. It's great to be with you guys. And gosh, it's hard to believe that it's been 30 years since we made Days of Thunder. You probably weren't born back then, or you may be just close. But yeah, how about that? 30 years ago, we made this movie. And speaking before we talk about the movie, yeah, it was a pleasure all these years working with you and getting a chance to be your partner and your colleague on pit road.
Well, thank you, Doc. We just watched the Golden Hour, the director's cut of Days of Thunder. It is so much fun seeing you in there. You're interviewing Tom Cruise and, doing your job like you did for many, many years on pit road. What were those moments like for you being part of a movie?
Well, it was, I had no idea what to expect, but I was just blown away with the intensity, the effort that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, Robert Duvall, everyone put in, and Robert Town, the writer. They listened to input from myself and other people that were involved in the sport, Rick Hendrick and some of the drivers we interviewed, but they really worked hard to make it realistic. I know there are some scenes that maybe weren't as real as we would have liked them to be, but there was a period of time, in the 80s when NASCAR was just, exploding exponentially, and there had not been an actual portrayal of the sport in a real way. There had been some action comedies, a Stroker Race and the Clyde Torkels and people dressed up in chicken suits. But this idea was to make the sport look like the sport is. And I was just blown away with how intense it was. How much, Tom Cruise and, really wanted to be a part. He got in the car and he would drive laps at Daytona or Darlington or Charlotte, wherever we were, just to get an idea. And then he would get out. But I think the best part was when those guys went with me to sort of watch and listen and embed themselves on pit road at Watkins Glen. They wanted to hear the lingo, the slang, how the drivers pick on each other before the race, and the things the drivers would come tell me as buddies, say, hey, I got a real good car today. And I'd say to the driver, well, go tell your crew chief. No, I'm not going to tell him. Like Tom Cruise in the movie would say, we're good, Harry. Don't touch it. We're good. And that, as Larry McReynolds knows, that happened a lot in real life, because the driver would not tell people how good the car was until the race started.
I love that they protected the integrity.
I was really impressed. You just mentioned it. They shadowed you that entire weekend at Watkins Glen in 1989. These producers and directors, they kind of came in, and I don't even know if they knew exactly how many tires and wheels the car had on it. They really wanted to learn, but they had to learn quick.
Yeah, the slang, the lingo, the swagger the drivers had, and they literally would stand a few feet from me all day as I'm going from garage to garage stall, and drivers would be poking fun. There'd be practical jokes taking place, before the race, and they had no idea what to expect. But I think they were blown away with the camaraderie among the drivers in the garage area and the crews. And then when you get on the racetrack or get ready to get in the car, they flip a switch, and suddenly it's every man for themselves. So I think the fact that they were there, I mean, you think about it, Robert Towne was an Academy Award winning screenwriter. I mean, Roman Polanski picked him to write Chinatown. I mean, Francis Ford Coppola picked him to write The Godfather. And here's this guy that decides he's going to write a movie about NASCAR and make it real. So he and Tom Cruise, they basically, disguise themselves with hats and sweatshirts and follow me around carrying a backpack full of water and batteries. I joked that first time I met Tom Cruise, he was carrying bottles of water for me, so for my day, so in the pits. But that's how much they wanted this movie to be real. And the director's cut you just saw, the people who put all that together realized they wanted to go back and recreate this, all the everything that Tony Scott wanted to try to do for the movie. They went back and talked to individuals. I tell you, even when they forgot to make a shot, it would be in the getting ready to finish the movie, and they forgot they wanted one more scene at Charlotte or Darlington. They said, we'd be sitting at Daytona. How do we recreate this shot at Darlington without moving the entire entourage back to Darlington? They would go up and they would find a camera angle that wouldn't make the banking look so steep, so it could look like Darlington. And then they went back and looked at the color of the garbage cans in the infield so they could go back and make sure the garbage cans were still the same color as they would be at Darlington, and went back and shot it again. I mean, that's how specific they were in making this movie.
I think that's why the budget went from 30 million to 60 million. Hey, you guys, we have a very special guest, two-time NASCAR champion. I think he could be Rowdy Burns or Cole Trickle, do the acting and the driving. Let's welcome in Kyle Busch. So Kyle, one thing for you, as your fans that adore you like to call you Rowdy Busch. Is there a correlation, Rowdy Busch, Rowdy Burns?
Maybe just a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of different things that kind of went on into the movie that was capturing many of the personalities of different drivers, but yet correlating them kind of together in order to make the storyboard. And it was quite interesting, obviously, with Michael Rooker playing Rowdy. We all kind of attribute that more so to the likes, I guess, of Dale Earnhardt driving the black car and being sort of the intimidating one on the track and intimidating the young up-and-coming driver of Cole Trickle. But, for me, it was my sense wasn't necessarily of being an intimidator or intimidating on the racetrack as much as it just was of acting a fool, I guess, sometimes, if you will, being a little rowdy in that sense and, causing a little disruption within the sport in my early days. But, it was really cool to kind of play onto that homage a little bit with the number 51 and the black and being able to race that. It started in the truck series when I was driving for Billy Ballou, and it's just kind of gone from there. And we've continued to carry it on into my late models and many of other things with the Rowdy brand.
Kyle, I got to ask you, Michael Rooker in the piece here, he talks about the fact, he said, well, my interviews usually didn't go that good in terms of interviewing for jobs and getting his acting roles. And he got the call for this one and it went well. But listening to him talk and his personality, he's kind of got that fiery personality in real life like you do. Have you had a chance to meet him at all and really get to talk to him and feel him out some? Because I know he's been at the racetrack quite a bit.
Yeah, actually, he and I, we've met tons of times. Anytime he's been to the racetrack, we always seem to hook up and, have a good 10, 30 minutes with one another. And then, of course, he's come to a few of the banquets as well, too, for the end of the year celebration. So we get a better opportunity to where I'm not at the racetrack. I'm not in a fire suit. I'm not going to the next thing. We get a chance to say, hey, talk a little bit and just kind of BS about some of the things that he's doing and that I'm doing and, reminisce about some of the old tales and stories of the movie and what all they were doing when they were filming and the excitement that everybody seemed to have while on set.
So, Kyle, I'm doing a little bit of math. 30 years, the movie, you probably had to wait a while before you were able to go see it. Because you were a race fan before you ever started racing. What was your impression the first time you saw the movie?
Man, I thought it was so cool. I mean, even just like the opening scene of, playing the Daytona and showing the fans and the flags waving, and then the roar of the engines and the race action that kind of took place. Boom, as a little kid, you're already in, you're bought. I'm sold. I'm watching. And then instantly, like scene 2 switches, and it's this guy driving down an old gravel driveway into a old barn and old house somewhere Lake Norman, North Carolina. And it's like, wait, hold on a second. Bring me back to the track. I want to see the race in action again. So anytime there was the racing scenes, I was tuned in and really ready for it. But as I've gotten older, as I've been able to appreciate the whole story and also know some of the backstory as well too, that's what really sets me in with the movie and just kind of understanding its full potential.
Did you have to, Larry Mack just touched on something your age, myself and you were similar in age. As I watched it for the first time, and I believe I watched it at home, actually, I didn't get to see it in the theater. My parents made me turn away during the, I believe it was the hauler scene when the police were coming up to the hauler and perhaps Nicole Kidman was going to try and arrest Tom Cruise. Did you get to watch that, or did you have to turn away for that too?
That was not Nicole Kidman. Get it right.
I have it completely wrong. Wow.
Nicole Kidman was the doctor. It was another young lady.
A hired hand.
Yes.
Yeah, so to speak.
I mean, yeah, I know. I got to see the whole thing from the first time I ever saw it. So there was never the blind eye that I was told to turn, but obviously it gets a little showy there for a minute, but that's about it. And then it's down to business. I don't even think I knew what the hell I was watching when I was first watching.
I lived a sheltered life, clearly.
Kyle, I love the fact that you identify with Rowdy. I love the fact that because of the fact that he was a take no prisoners kind of guy. But doing the movie and then later getting to know you when you came into the sport, I almost saw you as a Carrie Always or Russ Wheeler kind of guy. I mean, here's one of the things that veterans always hated was seeing some incredibly talented young guy just show up on the scene and start beating everybody. And to me, that was Kyle Busch. I mean, you show up, where this good-looking young kid come from? He's not old to be out here, and yet you show up, and no matter what you got in, you were able to run wheel-to-wheel with these guys and beat them. And so there was a lot of jealousy about this Russ Wheeler character, and that's what I saw you. You're way too nice to be Rowdy, I thought, but it stuck, with the race car.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's like you said a little bit earlier, anytime the race car drivers get to the track and they put their helmets on, they seem to flip the switch. Sometimes some drivers label that switch as dumb, they're flipping the dumb switch, but others it might be the aggressive switch, others it might be the fast switch. I don't know, but you're right. Obviously, it kind of seems pretty cool that I don't know. Some people have asked me, they're like, well, you seem more like a Cole Trickle. And I'm like, well, then others are like, well, you're more like a Rowdy. And that's kind of that's probably the second or third time I've heard that, oh, no, you're actually kind of like the Russ Wheeler. So, hell, I play them all, buddy. Just sign me up. I'll be in any which one. It actually makes the most sense for Russ, I guess. He drives the 18 car, but, it was pretty interesting now, looking back on a lot of stuff and how things kind of play out. I drove the 5 car with Hendrick Motorsports, and obviously Hendrick was the lead car supplier, if you will, for the movie and filming and all that. And then, I've driven the 18 car. I've driven the 51 truck in the truck series. My super late models are 51. And then, I've also driven the 46 in the truck series as well, too, and won with that. So I'm all over the board with these Days of Thunder numbers.
Absolutely. Well, Doc Punch, I know you need to jump on a plane, so it was a pleasure hearing some of your stories about your actions 30 years ago. You did a tremendous job in the movie, and of course, you continue to do a great job rolling with the punches with your beautiful daughter, Jessie, podcast. Keep up the great work.
Hey, thank you, Jamie. Thanks so much for having me, and really enjoyed the show. Can't wait to see the full-length film on the 30 years after the Days of Thunder.
At the Phoenix race, we made sure that we had cars that were able to qualify. Bobby Hamilton drove one, and I got in the other one. Rick wanted to guarantee we got one of them in the race so that we could get footage out there. Lo and behold, both cars made the race. Bobby had a great lap and qualified 5th for the event.
Bobby Hamilton had not run a cup race, so this was incredible.
You've heard of chasing rainbows? This young man found his pot of gold here today. Hendrick was so impressed, he said, hey, we're going to take the camera out of this car and let this young man race, give him his shot at the limelight.
All right, so this is After the Thunder. We're discussing all things Days of Thunder. Of course, America's crew chief, Larry McReynolds, Regan Smith, Kyle Busch, and we welcome in now Mr. Corey LaJoie, NASCAR Cup Series driver, but you don't look like the Corey LaJoie today. What's up with the fire suit?
Well, this is my favorite Halloween costume in the world. It is one of 3 original Rowdy Burns fire suits. Don't ask me how I got it or who I got it from. I'd have to kill you, but it's one of my prized possessions.
Kyle, what do you think?
It's pretty awesome. I'm jealous, actually. I have the helmet to go with it, so one of us has the helmet and one of us has the fire suit. We're gonna have to fight over the other half, I guess.
I bet if you put Corey in one of your trucks, he'll give you that fire suit.
Now we're negotiating. Now we're talking. I like that.
I don't even know where I got the helmet from. I can't remember, but it's still sitting at my shop. It's in one of the trophy cases at KBM, so it's pretty cool to have. And, obviously check out some old history of it sometimes, looking at what those guys would wear in the old days of racing in NASCAR. It's kind of crazy to look back on that. Your dad's familiar with that, I'm sure.
There's a couple helmets hanging up in this. I'll grab one right here. Like this thing.
Yeah.
Like, what is this doing for you?
I don't know what that's for, really. Those guys were nuts to be racing with those in the day.
Racing. Those guys were nuts. Now, that also explains why Randy LaJoie says some of the things he does, because he probably knocked his head with this protector a couple too many times.
That's true, too. I look at all the scratches on it. It probably did take a few hits.
I got to tell you guys, the one thing that I do miss from those helmets, though, and that I don't know that any of the 3 of us ever got to experience, taking the helmet off, taking the goggles off, and basically having a raccoon eyes almost from the clean goggles and everything else filthy like that. I thought that was awesome years ago. And in the movie even, just everybody being filthy all the time from those open face helmets.
Well, Corey kind of looks like it already, but yeah, when you're clean shaven, it definitely shows through. So, looking at the back scene, I guess it was the last scene. I think it was the last race, right? Winning at Daytona, and Claire jumping in on victory lane and getting a kiss, and all the smudge and everything going everywhere. So yeah, that's the tough style, man. That's the rugged. That's the rowdy.
We talked about Tom Cruise. He played Cole Trickle. He's been at the racetrack throughout the years. Good friends with Jeff Gordon, of course, and Jimmy Johnson, I believe, as well. Have you ever had a chance to actually meet him?
I haven't met Tom, no. Unfortunately, different paths and schedules, whatever, have not aligned for the 2 of us to meet. But obviously, meeting with Michael for a few times has been that way. But it makes a little bit more sense now, doesn't it? That Jeff Gordon and Tom Cruise are kind of friends, and Kyle Busch and Michael Rooker are kind of friends. Like, that kind of shows you just the characters in which we all might be.
I think we need a Days of Thunder too, and you need to play yourself.
Let's go. I'm all for it.
Imagine that. I've been saying there needs to be Days of Thunder 2 since, well, I guess the movie was out before I was born. But, I mean, how cool would that be to fire up Days of Thunder 2?
Yeah, no kidding. It'd be, you got to be careful though, because sometimes a lot of these remakes or these second offs on some of these movies is definitely never as good as the first. So you got to be careful about how you do it. And if I'm a lead character, it's never going to be as good as the first one, just because of my love-hate relationship with people in general.
Hey, but you'll be your own stuntman. That'd be the coolest part of it.
I could do that. I'll take a few hard hits.
Hey, Kyle, thank you so much for your time. It's fun talking, and now people understand where Rowdy kind of came from.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll keep playing it. Hopefully it keeps going well, and we'll get some Rowdy in Victory Lane. That'd be nice. All
right. Good luck the rest of the season.
Thank you.
They brought me out to the track, and they started up one of the cars. You could feel it in the rumble in the pavement. Truth be told, it scared the living hell out of me.
So Rowdy Burns. I love it. I just want to call you Rowdy Burns. It's so cool to see that actual fire suit. It's one of 3, you said?
That's what I've been told. So I don't try to wear it often. It's usually only October 31st or whenever the nearest Halloween party is. Days tucked in my closet.
That's awesome. So we're talking about the director's cut, just the behind the scenes and how the making of Days of Thunder came about. guys like Greg Sachs, Bobby Hamilton, and there were a couple others that were driving the camera cars for all of these awesome shots. Through thick and thin, they were behind the wheel. Would you ever sign up to do something like that?
Absolutely. I mean, my hope would be I'd be in the Cup race in some form or fashion. But if if they needed somebody to drive a car to be in the movie, I certainly would sign up to be a stunt guy for sure.
I'm really curious as to how, when they put those cameras up there, and Larry can talk more on the technical aspect, but those cameras couldn't have been very light. It had to really affect the setup, and I'm curious if they were able to get the setups good in those cars, or what they drove like, to be perfectly honest. But to Corey's point, I would love to do that. Think about this: you're making a movie, and I don't know if either of those guys knew when they were driving those cars at the time that this movie was going to become as iconic and as big as it has become over the years. But you're a part of history when you do something like that. So I would absolutely think it would be great to hop in and go out there and do something. And heck, if it's no matter what, if it's not going good, if it's not driving that good, you had a break every 20 laps. I mean, that's my kind of race right there.
Yeah, I mean, most of my early years as a crew chief, those cameras, I mean, they were mammoth. I mean, I remember one unit we put in one time for CBS. I think it was probably with cables and everything was over 30 pounds. But I think in those camera cars for Days of Thunders, those producers and directors, they were not worried about how the cars drove or how they felt. I think they were just more worried about getting the shots. And what solidified that is, I can't remember which one of the guys said that the producer or director said, now you're going down the back straightaway, you're running around 120 miles per hour. Make sure you take and put your knee on the steering wheel and then cut this camera on. And then give it a clap and then wait a little bit. Put your knee back on the steering wheel, make sure you cut this camera on. So I don't think they were really worried about how the cars drove. They just wanted to make sure and capture that perfect shot.
Well, it looks like, I mean, I'm wearing the fire suit, so I'd probably have a decent amount of Days of Thunder knowledge, but I was going to test your Days of Thunder knowledge with some trivia questions. How do you guys think you're going to do?
I don't know. I guess I've watched it so many times, I probably have kind of lost sight of some of these details of questions you're probably going to ask, but I'm ready.
I've already mixed up Nicole Kidman and the police officer in the movie, so I guarantee you I'm not going to do very good.
Well, they're not particularly hard questions. The first one's actually probably the hardest one. So it's an over-under, and I'm going to get all your opinion on it. So over-under, 35 cars, more or less, were wrecked in the creation of Days of Thunder. What do you think?
Under.
Under 35.
I'm going to go under.
I'm going to say absolutely over.
Well, to answer that question, it is approximately 50 cars were destroyed in the making of Days of Thunder. It's a lot of wrecked race cars, Larry Mack. While there was a movie being filmed, there's also simultaneously a race going on. The 1990 Daytona 500, very memorable finish. Who won that, Jamie?
Oh, my gosh. I can't remember who won the race. I know Dale Earnhardt won one of the dual races,
He
right?
won the duel every year.
Yeah. Do you know Regan?
I got a pretty good idea. I'm scared to say it and be wrong and not plead the fifth, but I'm pretty sure it had to have been Derek Cope that won that year.
Memorable.
Larry Mack, I would imagine you know the answer to that as well.
Derek Cope driving the 10 car for Bob Whitcomb, took the lead over in turn 3. His first of 2 career wins. He came back and won Dover a little bit later that year.
Well, thanks for the McNuggets to end that question. It wouldn't be Larry Mack if he didn't add a couple more details.
Chief was Buddy Perry.
All right, the infamous barn where they built Cole Trickle's car getting ready to go to the racetrack. Where is that barn located?
It looked like Dale Earnhardt's farm.
Meh.
Regan?
That barn is located at the corner of 150 and Morrison Plantation Road in Mooresville, and it still stands to this day, I believe.
It's still there. Barely standing, but it's still there.
See, I'm the only one that doesn't live there, so not fair, but good job, boys.
I love it. He even gave you the intersection.
Here's a Larry McNugget for you on top of this then. Who owned that barn for a number of years? Is the gentleman's name? Anybody?
Derek Cope.
Name was Thad Morrison, and now a big area in Mooresville called Morrison Plantation is named after him. He actually got to watch the filming of the movie from that barn. That was part of his one of his requirements, was he wanted to watch the movie being filmed while they were doing it.
And even though it was 30 years ago, you drive by that barn today, you would go, there's no way they did that scene inside that barn. I mean, it's just It looks like if the wind, it's beautiful, but it looks like if the wind blows hard, that poor thing's going to end up on its side.
And even crazy, the ramp that they use to get the race cars up in there is just as terrifying as the barn. I mean, I'd be scared to push anything up that ramp.
And as expected, I would have guessed nobody else would have gotten 3 for 3 in Days of Thunder trivia, of course, than Larry Mack. Larry Mack, congratulations. You were 3 for 3. Regan was 2 out of 3. Jamie, we got to brush up on the trivia a little bit next time.
Next time. You guys are very sweet.
But we have to give Jamie a hall pass. She does not live anywhere near Mooresville. She would have no idea where that barn was. And again, she was.
And I wasn't born in '90, Larry.
I was very young when this came out.
Hey, you guys, it's been so much fun. Corey, I mean, you made a statement. I love the outfit. I love the fire suit. If you're going to Halloween parties this year, I want to see pictures.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Larry Mack, Regan, great to see you guys virtually. This was a lot of fun. Days of Thunder, it's iconic. And to get to see the director's cut was incredible. And for all of you that maybe want to see it again, or maybe you haven't seen it at all, check out NASCAR's YouTube channel, Fox Sports YouTube channel. It's all right there. And it's fascinating what you can learn about Days of Thunder. So thank you so much.
For more great NASCAR on Fox content, subscribe to our channel. It's somewhere right around here.